Let's talk about what happened Saturday night because I was not watching on television. I was actually driving home from covering the Guardians game, which that was one where it's like of all the times to be covering a ball game that night, it's when it's also including two of the top college football teams of the year. People were wondering this is going to be a game of the year matchup, and I was not expecting a game of the year game to follow it, but it certainly did so. I was just getting back into town when I hear Paul Keels on the radio make that final call. And by the way, Mitch, a Hoban alum making the difference that Saturday night in one of the top 10. This has to be one of the top 10 primetime matchups we have ever seen from an Ohio
Yeah.
State football perspective. And it couldn't have ended any better. And if you're on Notre Dame's squad, particularly for Lou Holtz, it could not have ended any more heartbreaking. It's just like I can't believe the Buckeyes pulled out that victory the way that they did. It's kind of unbelievable.
It was such an entertaining game. And generally when you have ranked matchups going against each other, there's always going to be a lot of hype and a lot of buzz. But when Ohio State and Notre Dame get together, Mitch, there's always a lot of hype and a lot of buzz because they're one state away. The fan bases are so loyal and just all about that team. Ohio State beat Notre Dame last year in an ugly game in the horseshoe, but then with how Notre Dame started off the year and Sam Hartman, the transfer quarterback, and how he had been playing and the running back S time, and being one of the leading rushers in the country. Ohio State has this inexperienced quarterback in Kyle McCord going on the road into what is going to actually be his first hostile environment. You weren't sure what to expect. And Ohio State dug deep, and with their backs against the wall, Kyle McCord showed you just how good he can be and that the pressure does not phase him. And you get all the way down to the 1 yard line with 7 seconds left, and you spike that ball. And you roll out right, trying to get it to the best wide receiver in college football, Marvin Harrison Jr. Doesn't happen. And then you run the ball with Chip Trayanum on the last play of the game, and you get it. And Ohio State is a walk-off winner, 17-14 over.
Yeah.
Technically, yeah. There was 1 second remaining on the clock.
Yeah.
17-14 walk-off winner. I mean, it was such an entertaining game. Notre Dame's defense and offensive line, Mitch, I thought were very impressive.
Yeah.
I think that might be the strongest part. Their secondary is pretty strong, limiting the Ohio State passing game at times. It was so evenly matched. Ohio State had 366 yards total offense to Notre Dame's 351, 22 first downs for Notre Dame to 19 first downs for Ohio State. Notre Dame wins the possession battle almost 35 minutes to Ohio State's 25 minutes. But the defenses came to play. And now I really have faith in Jim Knowles and this Ohio State defense after seeing how they played against a team that was coming in red hot 4-0. They played week 0 in college football this year. So they had that extra game on Ohio State. What a huge win for Ohio State. It's already jumped them 2 spots in the AP poll. Picking up a ranked win on the road, let alone a top 10 ranked win, is mighty impressive. And the Buckeyes now off this week. They get to rest a little bit. Marvin Harrison Jr. was banged up a little bit, but Emeka Egbuka had a sensational game. 7 catches, 96 yards. He stepped up when the Ohio State needed him most. Travion Henderson had 104 yards rushing, but Chip Trayanum had some big runs, including the ultimate winning touchdown with the second left. So, Ohio State got plenty of help from all over the field from numerous players on Saturday night.
We got to talk about, too, Julian Fleming making a couple of big catches down the stretch, including that one on the final drive. Cade Stover was the leading receiver for Ohio State that night. That guy's been in the league, been in college for like 8 years. He was able to step up well as a big bruising receiver and slash tight end. But it's what everyone's talking about. What happened afterwards, where I knew once you heard the sports information director kind of whispering in his ear, and you hear Ryan Day say, "Watch this," something was about to happen. But I was not expecting the Lou Holtz thing to come out of nowhere, because look, we knew what we saw on the Pat McAfee show just a few days prior. And obviously Lou is more so for Notre Dame than he is for Ohio State, even though he's been at Ohio State coaching before. That's totally fine. I think we know by this point that wasn't Ryan Day trying to throw a shot at Lou Holtz. That was him trying to throw a shot at every person in Columbus who wants this man to lose his job, even though he's been in playoff contention over the last 3 3 or 4 seasons rather. This was a big test for him because the knock on Ryan Day was you can't win the big games. You can't beat Michigan. You can't beat Georgia. You can't beat Alabama. I'm not saying that Notre Dame is among the caliber of what those teams were, but this was a Notre Dame team that came to play. It was in the one of the meccas of college football, and you survived when your back was against the wall. You stared defeat in the face, and defeat blinked first. That was such a as much as people were kind of getting on Ryan Day for coming after an 86-year-old man, and granted the semantics of it are understandable, I could not have been more excited to have. I wanted to like go up and sign up for the U.S. Army after hearing Ryan Day's talk after that.
Yeah, you pointed it out. A lot of people have been on him because of the inability to win the big game. More so beat Michigan the past 2 seasons. More so, they had Georgia beat for the most part last year in that college football playoff semifinal game. And, if Marvin Harrison never gets hurt, has to leave that game. If he stays in, you would just wonder if Ohio State's able to come back and win that game and ultimately go play for a national championship. But Lou Holtz was the one called out because he was the most recent one to do it. But to your point, I think that was directed towards everybody that says Ohio State's not tough, right? They haven't looked tough against Michigan the past 2 years. I don't think it's really unfair to say that. Michigan has beat the Buckeyes butt 2 straight years, and we're not used to that. But that game showed you that Ohio State is tough, that they will handle and battle through adversity. I mean, this is a game that Ohio State led 10-0, and the next thing you know, you're down 14-10. And you stared defeat right in the eyes, like you said, Mitch, and defeat blinked first. Notre Dame got caught off guard, only having 10 guys in the field.
Yeah.
And it's things like that you have to take advantage of. And Ohio State took advantage of it, and they realized where the hole was on defense, and they attacked it with that last push to get in the end zone to win the game, and it happened. And that's a giant win for Ohio State, not only this season, but for Ryan Day as well.
I felt so bad for Marcus Freeman, and not just because he was at Ohio State at one point, but like he's a guy that can do something good for Notre Dame and has kind of brought them back into the national stage here in the last 2 years. He took accountability after the game, said that was on me, and I think he's probably going to learn from that as a young head coach. But at the same time, it's like, oh, it's that huge wave of relief that was going to wash over me. That game had such good juju. That win had such good juju that the next day, if the Cleveland Browns had gotten blown out 4-0, I would have been like, okay, but they didn't.